Greetings, I'm Dr. Batcha Montgomery. Thanks for joining us this evening. I want to share information about our FoodRx Healthy Lifestyle Series. The FoodRx Healthy Lifestyle Series is a comprehensive health and wellness coaching program designed to help you navigate your lifestyle towards optimal health. Do you want to reverse or control a chronic illness, or reduce or eliminate medications? You may want to avoid potential surgeries or medical procedures, or perhaps boost your immune system or improve your fitness level, or much more. The program starts with an intense 5-session, 4-week virtual coaching jumpstart phase, where you join a group of like-minded individuals dedicated to improving their health. You'll be provided a lot of support materials, including nutrition plans, recipes, supplement plans as needed, or fitness plans, and much more. You have full-year access to the support materials as well as our health and wellness team during and at the completion of the 4-week jumpstart period. To learn more about this program, connect on one of our links below or schedule a call with our team members. Let them know if you wish to speak to me directly, and they'll arrange a time for you. Optimal health is a lifelong journey. Let us help you navigate it to your most desired destination. Some kind of a lifestyle change, and then no longer get the food. Oftentimes I hear people talk about when they change their lifestyle, they're eating better, they're exercising, doing great things. Because I hadn't been sick in 5 years. I hadn't had a cold, and it's a common comment by people who take care of their health. And I can get into the details of whether eating a plant-based diet or not, but I won't. But just overall improvement of lifestyle and health, then people recognize the decreased infection. So we kind of put those two things, buckets. These viruses live with us. They come in, they're more pathogenic, more virulent, and they become less virulent, but more contagious. They can make you sick, and they can still kill some people, but not as many as when they came in. That's to the virus's advantage because it gets to stay around for longer. Then, on the other hand, you have the host, and then hosts who say, hey, I started taking care of myself, and I don't even get sick anymore. And so I'd like for the audience to really think about that, because we really need to put those things in context. Because if you have the viruses around all the time, but you have a host who, despite being, exposed to the viruses that live with us, they don't get sick, and other hosts do get sick. And I think we need to take that, picture in the context of, is it the virus or is it the host? Yes, the virus is around. But if it's cold, everybody's going to be exposed to the cold. But if you have an overcoat on, you won't suffer detriments. If you have shoes on, your toes won't freeze over. If your nose is covered up, you won't get frostbite in the nose. Some people will get frostbite because they're not fortified. So if you think of that analogy of freezing temperature or sub-zero temperature, and some people getting frostbite and some people not, those without clothes will get frostbite. They're not wearing shoes. They're not wearing coverings over the ears, so they'll get frostbite. They'll lose tips of their digits. And there are those who do have shoes that are fortified. They won't get frostbite. So the environment is the environment. It's cold weather. It'll come in, it's freezing, sub-zero, etc. Some people suffer the detriments, others don't. The difference is in the environment. There's no treatment to get rid of the cold other than let the season pass. But during that season, those who are fortified will not only survive but do well, and those who are not fortified will suffer consequences. Is that a reasonable analogy, in terms of dealing with the flu season and influenza? It's part of the environment. It's sort of an infectious microbial environment. And if you fortify yourself, you'll tolerate that environment better than if you don't.
Well, I think you summed it up pretty good. I would tend to agree with that, just based on the fact that when you research the history of the flu viruses, that it's all subtypes and subset of the same few viruses. They come from the same source, and they're all related. They're like cousins. So the environment hadn't changed that much. It's how our bodies respond to them that seems to be the most difficult, where the difficulties come in when it comes to dealing with it. So I think you sound really pretty good. And the more we see it, and there's research that's still ongoing right now to show that even though the H1N1 has been around for a while, that as the viruses mutate and change, um, they still fall in the same category. They still have the same kind of set of symptoms. It's nothing that is so unusual as far as a symptom change. The symptoms are still the same. It's always a respiratory issue. There's always joint pain, aching. Um, what we do see is sometimes they extend outside of what we call a traditional flu season. But the only real difference we see with the pandemic and see with our seasonal flu is the number of deaths or the number of people affected. And again, that goes back to our overall health. That if one particular strain can hit a vast majority of the population who have a certain subset of conditions and internal environmental conditions.
Wow. Wow. So based on these lessons going into flu season, I mean, um, I'm not sure we know which strain of influenza is coming. H1N1 prime. Have they published it yet?
Well, what they do is, and this is some new information. New information for me. I was aware there are a couple of different kind of strains. They call it a monovalent strain, a bivalent strain, and a quadrivalent strain, and you have a polyvalent strain. Well,
Mhm.
since 1950s, there was always an influenza A, which was where everything came from. That's where all the H series came from of viruses. And it was called a monovalent. And that's where we have the measles. When they give a vaccine for measles, it's only one strain of one virus in that vaccine. Your body sees that, it makes an antibody for it, and you're set. Well, in 1977, they started seeing influenza B and influenza A, two different strains of a virus, and the B was a little bit different. So they started coming with vaccines. They call them the bivalent. So they would actually put two strains in the vaccine that they would give people and cover both instances. So no matter which one you get, you'll be covered. And
Mm.
again, that developed into a quadrivalent strain, and now it's polyvalent. So a vaccine you could get, a seasonal flu vaccine, may have multiple strains in it. If you get the right strains, you may see less symptoms or have antibodies for it. If you don't get the right strain, people say, I took the vaccine, I still got the flu. Well, yeah, because the strain of the flu you got was different, that you contracted. And that's important to understand that it's two ways. Like I say, you could have a wild type virus, and you could have a manufactured virus in the lab. We call it manipulated or engineered virus,
Mhm.
and those two can combine and cause a problem. But the wild type, what happens as it goes to the population, everybody who gets it tends to mutate and change the virus a little bit. So how it dies out is that by the time it goes to the entire population, it's changed where it's not virulent anymore. So anything you do to a virus that's out there is going to affect how it affects the population. So if you take a vaccine, and this is research coming out with COVID right now, that researchers are saying that people who have either had vaccines in the past, like the H1N1 in 2009, they become more susceptible to get the virus in the future because you have actually changed your relationship with the virus by doing what the vaccine did for you. So it changes things. So it's so complex and complicated. Um, Taking an approach, you can never get to a real conclusion because, like I said, the ball is always moving. It's never in the same place.
Yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, it's great points you make, because that whole aspect of changing your relationship with the virus and changing your immune system. So there's clearly data out. There's some publications I remember reading. I think I did a show on it a while back, but there's data showing in kids and adults who get the flu vaccine are more susceptible to upper respiratory tract infection with another pathogen, so maybe RSV, etc. And so you do have these issues that you have to contend with, which in my thinking is that you have to go back to the foundation, which is to enhance your natural immune system, which, as we know, based on the COVID data, but I think we've known this for a long time, is going to be your best bet to fight these pathogens because it has the ability to adapt in real time.
Yes.
And plus, I think there's more of a global recognition. Somebody that's seen H1N1, your immune system may recognize H2N3 more readily. but I have to emphasize a healthy immune system, because
Yeah.
people say, well, I'm just going to let my immune system. But if you're consuming, you have a toxic lifestyle, consuming bad food, putting in lots of toxic chemicals in your system, etc., your immune system will not be optimized.
Right.
And so the emphasis is a healthy immune system, a healthy natural immune system, not an unhealthy natural immune system. Because as we know, the lesson from previous pandemics, lots of people die from these initial infections, and more of these people are going to be less healthy rather, whether young or old. Now, there may be characteristics of the the virus, that gives a greater predilection for young people versus old. Most times it's older. But either way, it's going to be most of the time people who are less immune stable or fortified that are ones going to succumb to sickness and potential death, more likely.
Yeah, I agree. Um, the I guess one other interesting point that I wanted to make with as far as the vaccine, I guess with the seasonal flu, is that people tend to you talk about well, even with COVID, where strains would develop in a place where it said people had no contact with each other, and again, that goes back to the original virus was H1N1, or subtype or subvariant was always there. So if it can happen in South Africa, if it can happen in London, if it can happen in China, because of the person's DNA or their genetic makeup, it can happen without these people coming in contact with each other, because the virus will mutate in your body and form almost identical or near identical variant, and so you get the same kind of symptoms. So they've been making a big deal, and I'm saying this only because I just look at the historical data. Again, I'm not trying to come up with a new theory or new science. This is what happened before, and this is what they talked about before, how the variants are developed based on the influences, and influences either from a vaccine, or the influences from another virus, or the influences from animal population. It could be many influences that cause that. So it's not like it's always spreading that way when it happened in Europe, or happened in South Africa, happened in the United States, and people didn't come in contact with each other, but you still can develop it that way. So people have to understand, again, that it's like I said, up to us to protect our health that way. Vaccines have the ability, according to the data we get, is that they can reduce the symptoms and reduce your likelihood of death. But if we are not doing the things that we're supposed to, like you just mentioned, that's really what the real problem is.
Yeah, and even that, I mean, it's hard to really even confirm that kind of data, but I understand what you're saying. But the other comment you made is interesting, in the sense that certain viruses, flu viruses, manifest in situations where there's minimal people-to-people contact, minimal to no. So that suggests that the virus may have remained in the host in a dormant state. Is anything else in the literature, the data that you looked at, suggest that?
Well, not only from the fact that, like I said, the viral infection. Let me see, which one was that? I was in 1958, 1959, which was a Russian flu, that it popped back up 20 years later. They said it wasn't heard of, and it came back again, and it was the same kind of strain. So what they're believing in, it was there. It may have been mutated to the point that it wasn't causing a problem. It wasn't causing an illness, or people couldn't notify it. But something happened where that dormant strain was either met another strain and manifest itself again. So it came back. And that's how I think the H1N1, according to the data, has been continuing to keep reinventing itself and coming back since the Spanish flu. And it may have been going back even further than that, but we don't have any way to document it, because we don't have the medical research or literature to show what the actual strains were at that time.
Wow. So what's your take-home message for our audience? I mean, we've been with these viruses for a long time. I mean, COVID is here, and of course, coronavirus is, I mean, just to put that in perspective, we've been living with coronavirus for a long time. I mean, COVID is just a cousin for coronavirus to cause a common cold. And we've had that for a long time. So, COVID, even though we call it a novel virus, is just a distant cousin or not so distant cousin of some very common coronaviruses. It's just a new, maybe it was genetically modified in a lab or leak or whatever the data may suggest. But it's just a new version of what we've been dealing with for a long time as well. I mean, is that a fair statement?
Absolutely a fair statement. And I would, again, they're all so intimately related because they're all either grandfathers or grandchildren of one or the other, cousins and nephews. They're all related in a certain way. If you look at the genetic pattern and all these viruses, and more viruses come around, they're all very similar. But when so what is I guess gives me pause is that when we interject man-made materials with the wild types, you get something totally different that maybe wasn't in the natural population initially. So how do you fight against that? And one of the most interesting things I did see on the FDA website when they talked about what do you do if you exposed to the virus, or how do you fight the virus? And they had only two suggestions. The number one suggestion was antiviral agents, and the number two suggestion was a vaccination. And so
even if you're infected, to prevent infection.
Even if you're infected, it was antiviral agents, and also to prevent. And then vaccination was what they would do is they would take the vaccines, look at what happened last year, and the vaccine would be for the next year. So that was a form of because when we saw with H1N1 in 2009, 2010, it actually stayed around. Sometime it stayed around 3 years in a row. It was the same strain. It didn't really change. It went down. It made a second wave. It made a third wave. It goes up and down, but it didn't really change a whole lot. And so that's why I said they would recommend antivirals. And so that makes sense from the standpoint that if your body is not optimal as far as health and wellness to combat the virus, the antivirals, and I look at it in the form of, let's look at the natural things first. Let's look at the olive leaf. Let's look at the oregano. Look at the quercetin, things we know that actually disrupt viral replication. The olive leaf, we know that it interferes with the cell walls of viruses, and so they can't replicate. So the problem with all these things is a virus. It's not keeping us out of the hospital. It's a virus. It's a problem. So we address that first, and then we know that there are antiviral agents that are pharmaceuticals you can use too. But if your diet, nutrition, lifestyle, wellness, the way you live is primary, then that's the best defense you're going to have to prevent it. And there's also the best defense that even if you get it, it won't replicate as rapidly and you don't have the symptoms. That's the goal. So my take home to the audience again is you have to, you have to take care of your health. You have to practice good hygiene, because you want to have every defense you can, whether it's wearing a mask, whether it's washing your hands, whether it's social distancing, whatever you have to do to protect yourself. I mean, because unless you're, living an optimal lifestyle and doing these other things additionally in our world today, you're at risk.
Great message. So really, it's really a global defense. Fortify the fortress first and foremost. Antiviral agents, be it natural or pharmaceutical, and optimize your health. Really, if it becomes a lifestyle thing, then these seasonal issues become less of a problem, because if you have these natural health practices year round, when flu season comes, you're ready. And of course, keep that vitamin D level up. That's one thing that we can put our finger on, that we do suffer. Low vitamin D levels. I have issues myself with vitamin D. Have to remember the supplement because I'm indoors too much. I go out as much as I can, but we live sedentary lifestyle. We're not farmers. We're not, gardeners and the like. So we don't mow grass very much anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Dr. Atkins, thanks a bunch. Great presentation. I will close up. I'll see you backstage.
Okay.
Great take-home message. As always, I learned something, and what we wanted to do today is to step back and give you a historical perspective on flu season. And Dr. Axon and I had discussions on this before, actually, the panel. And what I want us to understand is that what we're dealing with now isn't new. I mean, that's one of the first important points you need to make. The other take-home point is that your personal health is going to be the most important thing in helping you overcome any illness, whether you're talking about some chronic illness that can progress over time, or some infectious disease, or whatever the case may be. You're protecting your body's physical biome, optimal nutrition, fresh air, sunshine, regular movement, exercise in the form of regular movement. These are strong relationships, strong spiritual life. All of these things are really important in enhancing your overall health and wellness. Going into flu season, optimal diet, in my opinion, that's a plant-based antioxidant diet. Making sure your vitamin D levels are fortified. You probably should be taking 4,000 units a day at least. And you should keep handy certain nutrients, super nutrients that have antiviral potential: grapefruit seed extract, quercetin with zinc, liposomal vitamin C. These are things that are beneficial. Keep a super green food in your system at all times. These are some great take-home things going into flu season. Get with your doctor, have them check your vitamin D levels. You want to get it to 50 nanograms per ml or higher. In my opinion, maybe 70 or 80 going into flu season. Maybe that needs to be a year round. And you want to be optimized. If you're not on a completely plant-based diet, you want to increase the number of plants you consume during this flu season. These things are all important steps, simple things that you can do to enhance your overall health. And these anti-natural agents that can be beneficial, can be helpful. And of course, see your physician. If the vaccine is ideal for you, discuss that with your physician. If there are other antiviral pharmaceutical agents that are beneficial for you, discuss these things with your physician and come up with a game plan. But be proactive with whatever you do going into the flu season. And don't wait until you're very sick and have to rush yourself to the hospital. I'm working with all of my patients and giving them a game plan to sort of stay healthy and catch symptoms early. Come see us early, call us early to prevent having to go into the emergency room, the hospital with severe symptoms. So these are the things that I think would be beneficial for you. And I hope this message has been helpful. If it has been, hit the like button, please. Also subscribe if you haven't, and hit the notification button if you haven't. But by all means, share this information with anyone, loved one, or neighbors who may benefit from this information. Until next time, keep it fresh, natural, and live.